Welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm David Pavey. We hear a lot about freedom these days. Grateful to live in the land of the free and home of the brave. Though citizens of other countries claim the same privilege, by the way. The value of freedom came to me in a new way some years ago. In 1970, when the Iron Curtain separated Western Europe from the communist East, I had joined several colleagues on a clandestine trip to deliver Christian literature to believers in Romania. The mission was successful, so then began a 1,500-mile drive back to my home in France, in the company of my brother Eric from England and friend Phil from Australia, in our Peugeot station wagon. Our route west first took us via Cluj to the border town of Oradea, to cross from Romania into Hungary. How relieved we were not to need to be concerned about being searched, since we had left our precious cargo of Bibles in Bucharest. Romanian customs agents examined the Peugeot for a long time. They checked every nook and cranny for contraband. They opened the hood and all the doors. They checked the underside by means of mirrors. They looked under the seats, checked our passports and the car's paperwork, while we waited silently, as innocent as angels. Eventually, they let us leave Romania, and we proceeded a few yards across no man's land to let the Hungarians do the same thing. Fortunately, the latter didn't keep us long, so we drove due west for Budapest, the flatness of Hungary in stark contrast to the beauty of the Transylvanian Alps that we had crossed in Romania. From Budapest, it was only 150 miles to Vienna, but at one point we stopped for a few minutes. Eric and I wanted to take a photo or two from a bridge on a side road. The setting sun was reflecting off the train tracks below, making them look like silver streaks of light, while the approaching steam train was billowing black smoke and white vapor into the air. It was a photographer's dream. All of a sudden, a police officer appeared from nowhere, instructing us to give him our cameras and our passports and follow him. Phil was watching from the car as Eric and I were guided to the far side of the tracks, down a staircase, and into a police station where the door was locked behind us. There was no one else around. We had known that it was forbidden to take photos of airports, planes, military personnel, etc., but had never heard that trains were on the protected list. As the evening wore on, we learned that border guards in what was then Czechoslovakia, probably Russians, had seen us through their binoculars from the other side of the Danube and alerted the Hungarians. At all events, we were prisoners who spoke no Hungarian, of captors who spoke no English or French. Nor did they know how to remove the film from our cameras. One of our guards was commissioned to get on his bicycle and try to find someone who could translate, as Eric and I sat there, an hour from Vienna, the West, freedom, wondering how the story would unfold. Now and again, Phil would show up outside the window, always good for a little comic relief, and exclaim in his Australian accent, "Come on, boys, let's get this show on the road." Some 4 hours later, someone figured out how to take the film out of the cameras, and concluding from their questioning that we were small potatoes, returned our passports and our cameras to our delight, and let us go. We jumped into the Peugeot and raced for the Austrian border at high velocity, heaving a sigh of relief as we passed without delay from east to west. The lights of Vienna welcomed us to a sweet land of liberty. Our sense of freedom was palpable. Free at last, free at last. Now, Jesus had something to say about freedom to the Jewish leaders of his day, who thought that they were free, but were in fact slaves to legalistic religion. They felt they were special because they were the natural descendants of Abraham. But Jesus pointed out that they were slaves to sin and to legalism and to superstition. He called them sons of the devil, which is why they sought to kill him. He promised them that if they would listen to him and believe, they would know the truth, and the truth would set them free, free from the bondage of sin, free to live out the will of God. The follower of Jesus has entered an eternal, liberating relationship, so is eager to do the will of his Lord. He is no longer shackled by the endless demands of the Mosaic law, which always breeds self-righteousness. He is free to live by faith. The Bible affirms that the Holy Spirit sets the believer free from the law of sin and death, just as when you fly, the law of aerodynamics sets you free from the law of gravity. We thought that we were free in Hungary, but we found out we weren't. The laws of free Austria set us free from the oppressive laws of communist Hungary. Christian smuggling wasn't my cup of tea. But thank you for tuning in once again to Village Church Connections.